Okay, this session is about using Inkscape. So I will show you later why Inkscape is important. For now, you look up Inkscape, download 1.0. That's the version you want to go with. And you click on this link, then whatever you have. I have, for instance, the Windows. You click on the 64-bit architecture, you download the Inkscape file, you install everything, add it to the path, and then when you open Inkscape, it looks like this. All right. So Inkscape can do multiple things. I'm showing you a couple of hotkeys, for instance, now. First of all, the major things you know in Inkscape are why we use it is because we want to make pretty figures. I'm showing you later as well how to export a file from MATLAB, but for now, if you want to, for instance, click on the left side here, you can print a rectangle. Now, if you, for instance, want to make Shift-Control-F, there are a couple of hotkeys which are very important. One of them is Shift-Control-F, which brings you to the fill and stroke font. You can find them up here. I always go by the hotkey, it's much easier. You can click on the fill command by filling the rectangle in a certain RGB color. For instance, completely black would be 000, completely red would be 255, it's RGB, so setting red to be basically full power, and green and blue to nothing. Then you can transparent it out to make it lighter. You see the triangle, how it gets more transparent, but we don't really want this to happen. We want always full alpha value, ideally, because that's how an SVG file can be encapsulated into a PDF later on when you write the paper. So I don't like to mix colors because I'm not good with art, so I prefer HSL. You have HSL, you go by the full green value and you can basically scale it up and down, but by leaving always the alpha value to be full. And now you see as well when you installed MATLAB why it's so important to keep the alpha value to be 1. 1 means 100%. Remember the MATLAB file I showed you? This one, setting the file here in the startup MATLAB file to be DefaultAxesMinorGridAlpha 1 ensures always when you export a figure from MATLAB that your alpha value is set to be 1 of anything you're plotting, any graph. So you don't have to do this all over and over again. It's just a time killer. Now, if you pick, for instance, blue, you go blue, you can adjust it, and the RGB basically adjusts to that accordingly. It's just a different color scheme, which I prefer. So I'm good with those two. Of course, if you use the wheel or anything like this from PowerPoint, I'm happy as well, up to you. That's stroke. So let's say the stroke would be, let's say there would be no stroke, the fill color, and the stroke would be filling. That constants could be the green corner here. The stroke style, I usually like PT a lot, or PX. Pixel is basically, for instance, 5. Then the line gets larger. I think that makes sense. You can as well make the curves of the rectangle smoother and more edgy by using this when you do rectangle with this feature. Of course, you can do circles as well. You can click on the circle, make it a half circle, a quarter circle, and so on and so on and so on. And here on the top, you see when you have the circle symbol selected, how you can make this circle a full circle after you select it. F1 basically lets you select always to the cursor. Very important because sometimes you're stuck in text mode and you cannot really select this. So what do? You go with F1 back to your selecting mode, do a left click. The mouse keystrokes are not showing in the recording, but this will show enough and I think it's valid enough. Now, you can stretch objects. What do you do when you stretch objects? You can do extending without holding control, just like normal mouse click, left mouse click, extend this, or extend, for instance, this. Let me go a little bit out here. And you can do this, or this, do this as well. Now, sometimes when you have a rectangular plot and you want to make the plot just larger, you can, for instance, hold control, as I'm doing now, and it scales it in both directions. So you see the plot, I cannot go completely right or completely up and down. It scales it accordingly on the diagonal. Very, very nice feature. You can make, obviously, the line as well dashed. Sometimes that's useful. Let me zoom in, for instance. Or you can do different dashed line styles if you have multiple graphs, or like this kind of dash style. They have many, many options. If you want to plot a line, for instance, you can just click on this figure or use B. Actually, B doesn't really work here. I use this one, and you can draw a line in any direction. Left click, and you draw a line. If you hold control, as I'm doing now here, you can draw a line on a specific angle. I think the increment is 15. So 90, 75, or maybe 10. I don't know. But very, very precise, and you can draw a straight line, because drawing a straight line like this is very difficult. You see that as well if you select the line. It's not fully vertical. If you compare that, for instance, here, this space is much more here. So that's bad. So drawing a line like this and ending it with a double click, lift, left, left, creates a line like this. On the right side, you should see something called cusp node. Very important, or snap to cusp nodes. This means if you draw a line like this, it cusps automatically on that. So even if you're in the small regime around this here, you click on it and you can click on this line. It connects those two. Very, very useful as well. If I deactivate this tool, it will not cusp automatically on this node. You can click on it, but the regime itself doesn't cusp on it. Now, going back to F1, activating cusp node, I can as well do F2, which is this tool. F1 and F2 are basically your most important parts. F1 lets you select it. F2, you see the little gray node here. Once cusp node is activated, it cusps automatically on it. Super, super nice feature. Again, if it's deactivated and you want to put it on, it doesn't snap to it. I think that makes sense, right? So the other feature you have to be careful. When you do click on something like this and click it again, a yellow thing shows up. That's more like shifting it around. But you want the gray thing to show up, so you can actually just use that node and not both nodes. Otherwise, you can see both nodes move. Now, another thing is if you have a line and you don't click at the end of the line, you click actually at the semi end, maybe here, and you want to move it a little bit. That's again always F2. It shapes. If you click on it again, you can actually see the gradient. So you can use that gradient to do a whole different things and curves on that, like smoothing out curves or whatnot when you, for instance, want to illustrate a certain sketch. This tutorial is going to be a bit longer because Inkscape can cover so many things. Okay, then you can do, of course, free sketches. Sometimes if you want to sketch, for instance, a Wi-Fi signal, like maybe something like this, you can do that. Freestyle is obviously something like pens as well. I don't really need this. I don't use it very, very rarely. Now what you see now, my CMU font is so important. Why? Because F8, or is it F8 actually? It's actually T. So it's Control-Shift-T. Let's try again. F1, if you look here. If I put Control-Shift-T, I should jump to the alpha. No, it doesn't do it. It's just T. Okay. Or you click on the left side, T. And by default, it's called sans serif. Okay? Let's say I want to write maybe X. X looks very boring. I can choose different styles, of course, with the font here. Arial, very famous, or Times New Roman, and so on. What I want is, mostly we write equations, and we want to have to this certain equation as well a certain style. So CMU serif is the style you want to go with. One of them is CMU serif bold, CMU serif normal, CMU serif medium italic, bold italic. The one for equation symbols in figures is medium italic. It's this one. In papers, when you have a figure, you want to have as well use the same symbol in the figure. So I'm very particular about this, and I think that's very important to know. Of course, you can write X equal to B, I don't know, 5. Obviously the 5, the equal sign, then comes back to CMU serif normal, and there comes the white space in between. So that looks like exactly an equation in a paper or on your homework sheets when you see sometimes assignments because they're made in LaTeX. Okay? What LaTeX is, if you don't know, it's going to be in the next session. Regardless, what else do we have? We have, for instance, let's say I want to fill this, Control F, with a gradient. Okay, a black gradient. Sometimes you don't want a black gradient. Sometimes you want not a gradient. You want to have not a black full color. You want to have a gradient. So how do you do this? You click on gradient. That's not enough. You click on this one here on the left side. It's called gradient, G. Then it shows automatically. You click on this node. This node has a color property of RGB 000. Or you can actually make it reddish. The reason why it's like it's getting in a white color because the alpha value is low. If I increase alpha, make red, then the transparency goes from black to red. Or I can click on this node and make this, for instance, green. So you see sometimes a heat map or something like this can work. You can as well do different gradients where you have a center gradient going to the outside and you can play with that, for instance, in ellipsis shape or so. So that's very important. All right, we got this. Sometimes when you, for instance, free sketch, let's say a rectangle, custom node's activated, you're like, well, that's a rectangle now, but I can try to fill it with this function. You can as well use a bucket like in Paint. The Paint bucket, click on a certain color down here and fill it. That works as well. Or fill this one, for instance. Sometimes those features are important. You can obviously use a spray bottle as well. I don't really think that's very, very useful. What else is useful? If you want to, for instance, mirror an object. Let's say I make a rectangle like such. And let's say I'm deleting my font around here. And let's say I want to mirror this like, actually, let's draw something better which can be mirrored. Let's say something like this. and I want to mirror this object. I Control C and Control V. I copy paste it over, and then I press Control Shift M, which brings me to transform. You'll find the transform thing as well here in the path. Actually, maybe in, I don't actually know where you find that. So it's much easier doing it by hotkey. Control Shift M, transform, and then scale. If I scale this object in a percentage symbol, very important, by 100, obviously flip it, right? But sometimes you want to flip and turn it. So you can, for instance, say, I want to do -100, -100. And it just flips diagonally. Okay? The other things which are very important is you can rotate it as well by 90 degrees. But again, rotation, one click with a cursor on F1, one click, move it around. The second click will let you rotate it. You can rotate it by any angle you want, or you hold Control, as I do now, and it goes by increments again. Super, super useful tool, important. I bet. So for instance, here, once a rectangle is in front of this thing, sometimes you want figures be appearing behind a certain object. You can go with a layer feature up here, page down. You can see it's on your keyboard. This is end, brings it right to the end, while the home button on your keyboard brings it right to the top. Or you go layer by layer. Or you go full. I usually don't go layer by layer, I go full. Sometimes you want grid lines behind, certain figures should be in front of some other figure. That's why it's very, very important. Okay, skewing things, I don't really use it much. Scaling is very important, and moving it is not very important too, because you can just do manually. You can move it as well with the X and Y value up here. Other things. Well, for instance, let's say I plot a figure, which I do later. Let me actually plot a figure right now quickly. So I have here a figure. I do clear, CLC, clear, CLC, close all. And you do linspace. Let's do random function, random 100 by 1, and this is X. And Y is just a sine of X. It's equal to be sine X. Okay, and then I do plot X over Y. Super simple, right? Execute the code. Should get a nice figure from that. Okay, so you know the best figure. Let's say I do actually linspace of X. Linspace 0 to 100 and 101 elements. Okay, nice. And let's put another figure on top of this. Y2 is going to be cosine of X. And I do hold on. I do plot X, Y2. Okay, plotting it all together. Nice. Now, very important, you can use this Python obviously as well. File, save as, and you go as SVG, scalable vector graphic. Untitled for now, that's fine. Export. You see something white popping up around the corner, and then it gets black. Now, the startup file should have taken care of this. Let's see if we get this one running, and then run this again. Let's see what the figure looks like. So I'm going into my tutorial, and that is the code in videos. Untitled figure. I open this in Inkscape. Takes a moment. Why use Inkscape 1.0? Because it's less buggy. So then you have hotkeys like this whole thing comes as a group. You want to ungroup this whole thing. What do you do? Control Shift ungroup. I can write, and you can ungroup as much as you want. You see the groups get smaller and smaller. At some point, you have always a white background behind from MATLAB, which can be deleted. Another white background which can be deleted, and that should be it. Then you have the plot. So now it's very handy when you, for instance, want to bring these lines, those black lines, in front of this red one. So the red one, for instance, now in front of it, I want the red one in the back. I go with the red one behind, I go with the blue one behind. There's another white spot here, but now the red line is behind my grid, which is very, very nice. And then you can edit the numbers. 0.8, for instance. You can make the number smaller by scaling it, holding Control, put it behind here. But for instance, this can be deleted then, because these numbers from MATLAB look super ugly. Then let's say you cannot align it very properly. What you do, click on the little tick, hold Shift, click on the next one. Shift is letting you select multiple things. Go on Control Shift A for aligning. And then many, many options. Of course, I want the tick to be exactly in the center of the 0.8. So what I do, press this one, and horizontal axis. I can as well bring it very close to the axis, which doesn't really do a benefit. Let's say I'm going with 0.8, make it 1, and create multiple of those. 0.4, 0.6, and 1. F1 again, delete this one, this one, this one. And now I'm very lazy. So let's say I have multiple of those. Let's say I go until here. This one, by the way, is always going to be your -1, -1. In fact, this minus is not really the minus sign. That's more actually like a kind of a dash. So the real minus sign is Control U. Pay attention, now Unicode shows up in the bottom here. And that's like 2, 2, 1, 2. See, it shows you it's a minus sign. Enter, that's the real minus sign. Then you click on this one, align it. And now I have so many numbers in between here. So what do I do with all these numbers? I go highlight the first one, and you always have relative to first selected. So everything is relative to the first selected. Click on this one, this one, this one. You can as well highlight a couple of them like this, and this, and then you want to equally space them along the y-axis. Let's say I have them all figured out, and they're all figured out here, and I align them like this. Super, super easy. Same on the x-axis, and you're done. That's it. If the ticks for it's not too small, you can select all the ticks, scale them a bit higher, so it looks nicer for the eye. Or maybe you say the graph is too small. Control-Shift-F, stroke line, make it 5. Looks thicker, for instance. Another thing, let's say you have so many lines, you're tired of that. What do? Control-C, and press then, highlight all the objects. What I always do is like I highlight this one, highlight this one, highlight this one. So you're all selected with Shift, basically holding Shift down. And then you press Control-Shift-V. That copies the style over to these lines. I forgot to select this one, and now it's selected as well. So the style with Control-C, holding instead of Control-C and Control-V, you basically have Control-Shift-V. That means you copy the style with a Shift included. And then, of course, these graphs, for instance, as I said, you can bring the red one behind the blue one, or the blue one behind the red one. It doesn't really matter, okay? Let's say you want to create an inset. Very important tool as well. Inset in a figure. You want to really see what's going on in this area. So highlight. Sometimes the circle is not, you go in the F1 tool, click on the circle, make the width, I don't know, 75 and 75. So you have an equal distributed picture. Here's the trick is, take another circle, click on the circle, align the circle on top of each other. Then select the whole picture, but unselect, actually what I should do, let's do this. You need to unselect the circles first. So let's say I want to do this. Control G to group it. Then I have my circle here that goes on top of here because I want to really see what's going on in between here. I align my second circle on top of that, click. And now I'm selecting first this object, hold Shift, press left mouse click, go to Object, Clip, Set. Done. Now, what I actually should have done as well is, let me do that quickly. Sometimes when the plot looks like this, you have to zoom out. Take another figure and put it with cusp node on top of this figure. So now they're exactly overlapped. Two figures on top of each other. Bring both in the background with end, or the layer here in the bottom. Click on this one, hold Shift and take the circle. Go again on Object, Clip, Set. Now, I have an object, if I select the circle as well, with both, which I can move around. So I have an inset. I can make a zoom. So when the user looks at this plot, for instance, you were here, you can say, okay, this is basically a lensed view on top of that area. So you can really see what's going on. This can be put in a plot behind it or whatever. Totally fine, okay? Yeah, that's it for this one. So I think that helps you. You can obviously do many, many things with the line figures. This feature, for instance, if you have, let's say, two numbers over here, I can complete this over. You want to put this exactly next to the other one. You can do this, or you can do this. So or lining like this, or lining like this, or like this. It all depends, basically, whatever you desire. Yeah, that's for that. Otherwise, you can come ask me. There are multiple features, which I don't even know yet, but that's the basic idea. You have offsets as well and other tools. It's a very nice figure. So now, let's say we're done with the figure. What do? I can do Control-Shift-D. It shows me the properties of the file. That's the width right now. Two options. Either you export a PNG, you highlight, or you press Control-Shift-E. That gets you to the export. Control-Shift-E for export. You do selection, select everything, and say export as. You select the thing, PNG, pick. Save, not done yet. You have to click export. Exports the figure, it's right here. Big problem with this figure is it has a black background. Why? Because we never defined a white background. Finding a white background would be involving a white rectangle behind that, like such. So now if I Control-Shift-F again, fill the figure with a white background, bring the white background in the back, and I export this whole thing again with Control-Shift-E. You have to rename the figure again here. Export this whole thing. Now we have a nice figure with a white background. That makes complete sense. Other story is, let's say I want to bring this into, I want to make the corner. So that's PNG. PNG is not ultra clear because in PNG you can actually zoom in and see the pixels. The DPI of a figure is determined here. If I increase this, for instance, let's say I make this, it takes forever now to export, but let's say 250, export this. You see the export bar actually was pretty fast. I exported this one, look onto it, file size increased. Now it's a little bit sharper than the other one, but that's not good enough. So what I want to do is I want to export actually as you highlight everything, press Control R. That means a rectangle adjusts to the size. So if I bring this one, for instance, more inside here, press again Control-Shift R, that's this one. Then you say File, Save As, or Control-Shift-S. And here now, we're using a good feature, which is the EPS, Encapsulated Postscript. Okay, you can as well do PDF. I show you what happens. Just press OK, that's fine. Look at the PDF. That thing right now is only 19 kilobytes compared to the PNG. You see the difference? And on top of this, you zoom in, it's super sharp. That's exactly how a nice paper is written and how you do that. So for us to get this into LaTeX, we can import this PDF as a figure. What I prefer is using this, Control-Shift-S, and get the EPS file. EPS. Export this as is and be done with it. So sometimes when you do a PowerPoint presentation, these EPS files are ugly and don't get it. So I don't want to see anybody doing this kind of thing, snipping tool and copy paste it over, because snipping tool is really pixelated. Forget that. So the idea is highlighting everything, Control-Shift-S, and getting the EMF. That's when you go to a conference, you want to show figures, you need an enhanced meta file. So this structure is kept the same. Otherwise, some numbers might shift if you use a scalable vector graphic, because PowerPoint doesn't like that. Okay, so that's it for everything I know so far about Inkscape. So you know now the linkage between Inkscape and MATLAB, how useful it is, and sometimes when you have a surface plot, for instance, let's say I want to do z is equal to b, I don't know, cosine x as well, and I'm doing a surface plot. Surf z. So let's say this, and I'm doing this plot. I don't like what's going on here. Let's say cosine x, or maybe it's plot 3. Because I have to do, okay, let's say x and y as a vector, so I do xmat, comma ymat, and you do comma mesh grid x and y. All right, and z is going to be random vector of 101 and 101. That should do it. So let's see what this looks like. No, that's not it. I want to do the surf. And this is xmat. It's some random plot right now. Doesn't mean anything. But this plot, for instance, if I export this one to be an SVG to work on it on Inkscape, click on it. Okay. Overwrote our file. It's only 163 kilobytes. Very small. But you see, it is not sharp. Why? Because we didn't activate painters. You go in our function, run this command where you look at the file, you select this file, and run this command. Then you go back to the file. It takes forever because my figure is stuck now. It's way too many pictures. So what I'm doing is I'm plotting something easier. MATLAB is stuck now and completely overloaded. What the idea is just set GCF renderer needs to be activated. So let's say I do only 11 samples. And here I do only 11 as well, and here I do only 11 too. So let's see if this works. Okay, I'm going to rotate this a little bit, export it again to be untitled, click on it. It says some UI will not be included, whatever. 52 kilobytes, way too small for an SVG file. You click on it, it should open soon. Let's see. It's pixelated. So what we do, go to MATLAB, run the renderer command, render it, takes a while. And then you do save as, untitled, click on it again, and now it's 212. Well, voila, because the file size increased and our figure looks now sharp. So now you can actually work with this. Export it as a PDF, for instance, Control-Shift-S, PDF, or I'm just showing you how in PDF it would look like. It's basically an EPS. Click on it, export, replace the old one. Done. Look at the file itself, and you can zoom on it and it stays sharp. Okay, that's the thing why Inkscape is so powerful, and you use it in papers. Okay, that's it for this one, and